Season 3, Episode 3 of Dipping in and Out with Lucy will be with Richard Port MBE. We're focusing on the conversation around domestic abuse and the family court system. I wanted to let everybody know that the episode is actually split in two. We had so much to discuss, and at this time of year, it's a really important conversation to have around domestic abuse and the family court system for parents to be able to access this support and information. Hopefully, it will give people some insights and help them through a very, very difficult time. Hi, and welcome to Dipping in and Out with Lucy, the podcast that opens up the discussion around domestic abuse. I'm here today with the very lovely Richard Port MBE. Richard is a partner and family law solicitor at George Green, but not just that, he's many, many, many other things. And I think it's only right to hand it over to Richard to explain a little bit more about what he does.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you very much for having me today.
Oh, yeah.
I look a bit like a radio controller for an airport, so just you have to excuse that. But I think really what my kind of role is, I'm a family lawyer by day. By night, I'm on LinkedIn advocating for victims of domestic abuse, wanting a change for victims. I've been doing this for years. I think the phrase is, where have I been hiding under what rock? But I've not really been hiding. I've just been trying to help victims. I've worked with many refuge centres, other organisations, and I just really want a change for victims, give them that voice.
Yeah.
I think when you talk to quite a few people about the subject of domestic abuse, it's quite a taboo subject, and it's not one that you bring up at a dinner party. And
No.
It's a weird one, because when people ask me, they say, "What do you do for a living?" "Oh, I'm a family lawyer that specialises in domestic abuse." They go, that's the end of the conversation.
Swiftly move on.
Yeah, move on. Great, lovely. But I don't want it to be kind of a taboo subject anymore, because the thing is, once you make it a taboo subject, people don't talk about it. People then don't feel comfortable coming forward with what they've suffered. And then if that happens, then perpetrators get away with it, because you're kind of empowering them. You're giving them a shield to hide everything, hide the abuse, hide the control, everything like that, because no one feels comfortable or feels safe in themselves to come forward with what problems they're facing. So I think my main aim is just to get more people talking about it. And that's from a family law perspective. You can speak to different family lawyers and they can tell you that the family justice system is the best thing in the world. It's not. Sorry to burst the bubble for many. It's not the best thing ever. I might get shot by different family lawyers for saying that, but it isn't. Victims are facing so many problems with the courts. There's delays, there's a lack of continuity with judges. We've got new laws in place, but they don't seem to be kind of filtering through to the actual courts themselves,
Right.
or actually kind of, so you put an argument forward, and you think, well, actually the law says this, and therefore the court needs to take into consideration, but it's kind of falls on deaf ears. The big phrase that I use, which I've kind of coined, is that if you give a victim a shield, perpetrators use it as a sword. So as soon as you change the law and you have a zero tolerance on domestic abuse and say, look, as soon as domestic abuse is raised in the family court system, boom, stop contacts, don't do this, don't do that, stop it altogether. But most of the time, perpetrators accuse that their victims of domestic abuse, so we can't do that. You can't say a zero tolerance. And some people find that weird when I say, well, we can't have a zero tolerance on domestic abuse. But if you think of the bigger picture, you can't at all.
No.
Because the amount of victims that would not be able to see the children, not be able to lose money, they'd lose stress all the time. You can't have a zero tolerance. It can't be one size fits all. You've got to be able to approach it from different angles, because perpetrators are getting smarter. That's the problem.
Very much so, and very often using the family court as a weapon, really, isn't it? I heard once somebody say using the court as a third parent, almost. Getting somebody else in to almost be on side with them, and it's very, very difficult if somebody, say for example, a litigant in person, I at least do know that term, is very hard for them if that many times the perpetrator will have representation, the victim potentially doesn't. And it can be even more intimidating and scary because they feel that, and especially if you've experienced abuse, you're already thinking that you're stupid, that, you know, you can't do anything on your own, and that the perpetrator has all the answers. So you're already going in. I think I once said it's for a lot of victims that I'd worked with, it's like tying one hand behind your back, trying to fight with one hand tied behind your back, you know, and trying to get your message across. And it's so unfair.
You go and you doubt yourself. Like you say, you've had years in most circumstances where actually you've been told you're worthless, you're nothing, you're not going to amount to anything. If you leave me, you'll be nothing. You won't get what you want. I'll take the kids. I'll take all the money and all this. So you're already on the back foot because you've got that doubt, because you think, well, actually, my perpetrator's going to be right. He or she knows that actually I'm not going to win this. I'm not going to get what I want, and I'm not going to get my freedom back from all of this. So you're already going in with 50% less confidence. And then you go into court and you've got either got a litigant in person perpetrator who thinks they can get away with murder and say whatever they want, do whatever they want.
Yeah.
You've got a court who, and fair enough, they have to take in both sides as to an argument. That's fair enough. But sometimes it becomes a circus. And unless, and I feel so sorry for some judges, because again, they're looking to peacekeep. But sometimes you can't control that circus. And that's where family lawyers come in, because again, a decent family lawyer who does specialize in domestic abuse cases, it's not about peacekeeping, it's about making sure that you are defending your client. They've had years of being bullied, they've had years of being put down, they've got no voice, some of them have got no strength to fight. So it's having that person by their side to go, I've got this. You just tell me what you want, and I've got this. I'll sort it out. And it's standing up and making sure they've got that voice again.
Because that is so true. And I think for many people, you know, they worry about the cost involved and all those kind of things. But when you're talking about your children and you're talking about, you know, it can be the most minute of things, but that will go into a court order. And that's what people forget. It could be to most people something really, I don't know, like Easter holidays, whatever. Well, we'll just do this. But unfortunately, that all needs to be agreed to. And very often with perpetrators, they'll agree to one thing in principle and then will quite happily breach their own court order, or, you know what I mean? Because it won't fit in with their plans anymore. Because let's be honest, what is ever set in stone as children grow and they age?
You can't tell me what to do situation. I don't get told what to do by the courts. You can't tell me what to do. And it's that pure narcissism, isn't it? It's basically, I don't care about the courts, I don't care about the police, and I certainly don't care about what you say. So I'll do what I want to do. But the problem with perpetrators is, fair enough, they've got that little narcissistic edge to say you can't tell me what to do. But until they're actually confronted, until they realize actually there's an unmovable force there that's going to keep going for them and saying, look, if you don't do as you're told, then there's consequences to it. They'll just carry on. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And I'll say to clients that, because they'll go, well, I'll just let him do it this time, or I'll let her do it this time. And I go, you can't do that, because the thing is, you're setting a precedent there. You're setting a standard of where they go, I'm just going to do it because you didn't bring it up last time. You didn't do anything last time. You didn't enforce anything against me. So you're not going to do it again. So you're just full of hot air. It's not going to work.
And that's the sad thing, isn't it? Yeah, God, because so often, like you said before, a victim will maybe not have much fight left in them, even before they've gone to the first hearing, you know. And if they do say, look, I'm not going to argue that point, I really don't want to go down that road, or I really can't face it, unfortunately, it is something you have to face up to as a reality and say, but you need to, because this could have an impact years and years down the line if the children are quite young, for example. And it's so hard when victims and survivors and whatever everybody wants to call themselves, it is very difficult to picture that long stretch of time in front of them in terms of with the children. You know, that's a biggie, isn't it? It's the children could be as young as, say, 2 or 3, and there's a very long road ahead, and things will change in that time. And it is difficult when, with most people, if you were going through a healthy divorce, if you like, or separation, it's hard enough then coming to agreements. Add to it abuse, post-separation abuse, trying to come to agreements on things and getting the perpetrator to stick to those agreements for a prolonged period of time. You're already on the back foot, aren't you?
Do you know what the worst phrase that I hear most of the time? It was a toxic relationship. Because that phrase, that's the get out of jail card. That's you're to blame and you're to blame for this.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you've neutralized all the issues of domestic abuse with that phrase. It was a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
And then I had to stand up and go, no, it wasn't. It might have been toxic from that person, but not from my client. My client would have to take the brunt of it all.
Yeah.
And what do you do in that situation? Do you just sit down and go, yeah, that's fine. You can hit me, you can emotionally abuse me, you can swear, you can do this and that. I'll just take it all. Because how far do you go with it? So when someone then does stand up and say, fight for their situation and say, I'm not taking this anymore, toxic relationship. You spoke up to him, so it must have been toxic. And I hate it because again, there's some months where we've got the courts and they must have meetings because it's like the flavour of the month. What's the phrase of the month we're going to use? The toxic relationship.
Yeah.
And I have to then justify to stand up and just go, no, it's not toxic relationship at all.
No.
So yeah, again, I just want to make sure that we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And I know so many victims. I went to a conference the other week for the Haven Refuge, and I had so many people come up to me after I did a talk to say, well, actually, yeah, you're absolutely right. I felt voiceless in the family courts. And every time I did then speak up, I was told to shut up and just put up with what the situation. Shut up and put up. And that's not right at all, is it? You don't go to court because you're both amicable and you both agree the situation, unless sometimes you do. Sometimes you get a consent order and it goes in, but most of the time there's an argument to be had, and you want to be heard. You want your points to be considered, but to have it kind of brushed under the carpet and then the label toxic put all over it to justify the actions, because then you're empowering a perpetrator, aren't you, really?
Absolutely. Oh God, absolutely. And like you just said, so either, and this is where it is complicated, this is why it is important to talk about it, because people will think, right, so the victim goes to court and they've got no fight left. They can also go the other way and be going in there thinking, I am not going to take this line down anymore. I have had enough after all these years. But then they get considered as being, like you say, difficult. Well, there must have been a toxic relationship.
Troublemaker.
Because now they're not saying yes to everything. They're not agreeing and rolling over anymore. And people are different. I will always say that, domestic abuse is unique to each situation. There may be threads that run through that are similar, but every situation is unique to that person. And that's where I think the family court have their battle, is trying to realize that you cannot do this blanket approach to a court order. Okay, there's children, there's this, we'll do this. Every situation is so unique, and you have to look at it on its own merit. And do you think, just out of interest, I don't know, so in terms of, somebody said a while ago when I was working at my local domestic abuse charity, that training would be something that would benefit the family court, but I don't know if that's something that would ever work.
The problem you've got is we're in denial about it all. Because if I spoke to the courts now and said to them, look, we've got a problem with what victims are facing, they'd say, no, we don't. We don't take it as a one size fits all approach. We look at each case individually and we deal with it. And there's so many different threads of we have CAFCAS involved, or we have social services involved, and we have the courts, and then we have magistrates, we have district judges. And there's so many different threads, and training would help. But what's that kind of phrase about filling up a half full glass anyway? You're going to train them and you're going to tell them, like, everything that you knew before about victims of domestic abuse, wrong, forget about it. This is the new approach. This is how we need to deal with humans. These are human beings with real emotions and real situations and real stories. And you can imagine that we've got very confident judges, we've got very confident lawyers and barristers and things like that. And you telling them what to do? No. Well,
It's not going to
I
happen, is
know
it?
how to deal with a case. I know how to deal with this, and I've been doing it for many years. And why would I need to change on that? So,
Mm.
training to a certain degree would, and in theory,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah,
Again, it's nice to think that it would. Continuity from the courts and how they deal with a case.
yeah.
If they're going to say, this is how we deal with a case and this is the procedure, then every judge needs to be doing that.
Yes, yeah,
You don't
yeah,
want to be going and thinking, actually, what side has the judge got out of bed this morning?
yeah,
Because really, this is how the case should be dealt with. But actually, the judge goes, no, I'm not dealing with that. This is how it's going to be sorted.
yeah.
Um, and it's a tricky one because you
It
were
is.
talking about costs.
Yeah.
It's expensive. If you've
Mm,
got a lawyer, it's expensive. But at the same time, if you've got a decent lawyer, they will
mm.
work with you and they will tell you these are jobs that you can do yourself, and these are the jobs that actually are just a bit out your remit.
Yeah.
If you haven't got a decent lawyer, they will
Well,
tell you you can't do diddly squat.
you
I've
can,
got to do it
yeah,
all. I've got
they'll
to do
take you for
every single
everything.
bit of that work. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's a business. But like I say,
Mm,
the way I work, and that's how I'm here to help people. Fair enough, my job is a family lawyer, but at the same time, clients refer me on to other clients,
yeah.
and having that reputation is where I get to help more people and get out there to the bigger and help more people in the situation. But it's making sure that you feel confident with your family lawyer.
Mm,
You know
yeah.
full well that the work is being done. You know full well that you've got that kind of relationship with your family lawyer, that you feel confident with them, that they're on your side.
Yeah.
And it
Mm,
annoys me slightly, and it has done for many years, where we've got firms that say, I specialize in domestic abuse cases. And those said firms, I'm getting their clients come to me because they go, no, they don't, not at all.
and I've
Um,
spent
I,
X amount and I've got nowhere.
I've
Yeah.
spent X amount. I felt judged. I was told they were going to keep me updated and they were going to make sure that I understood and what was happening and we had the best result from it all. I don't even know what's happened in my case. And again, the second thing I've been trying to push for is
Mm,
client standards, because
yeah.
I'm not asking for the red carpet to be rolled out for victims, but I'm asking that we have the best client standards possible to
Yeah.
make sure victims get the best service in the courts. And
Absolutely.
and people ask me, so I've got an MBE for legal services to domestic abuse victims, and I think I'm the only one in the country that's got that. I could be wrong.
No, I think I've done my homework and I don't think there is anybody else, Rich. I think it
Yeah.
is just you.
So people say to me, do you know what? You must be really proud to get an MBE, and I am in a way, but I'm
Mm,
also slightly embarrassed because so for an MBE, you get the seal of approval from the royal from the Queen for me to say that you are going above and beyond what people do in your profession to help, so in this instance, victims. Now, I don't feel like I'm going above and beyond. So I feel like I'm doing what
what should
victims
be done?
should be done,
Yeah.
not having to wait a year and a day for a phone call, getting the best advice, making sure that the case is set out and that they understand what's happening.
Mm,
Now, if I don't think that I'm going above and beyond, that then tells me that other solicitors are not doing that.
no, definitely not.
So, so again, the big push for me is to make sure that actually we are giving the best for victims and we are giving the best for clients all together, regardless
Mm,
of whether it's a legal aid case or whether it's a privately funded case.
mm,
It's making sure that we give the best possible service. So we can argue and say that the courts need to change, but at the same time, we could argue as well that
yeah.
as family lawyers, we need to make sure that we're giving the best to our clients. They're
Yeah.
not a number in the system. It's not a conveyor belt. They are getting the best service and they're getting the best advice.
That's a really good point to make because I think, definitely you are right. You are, going above and beyond. And sadly, that is the truth. And there are many that aren't. And unfortunately, it's more about the billing than it is about
Mm.
the actually getting the result that your client is looking for.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going in with big trust issues anyway, and very, very a lot of pressure, and one thing I loved about doing this episode at this time of year as well, and obviously this is going to be released beginning sort of mid-December, is Christmas is such a horrific time when it comes to family court orders, children saying, don't want to go to perpetrator parent this Christmas, want to stay here with you, parents going, victims sort of saying, well, what the hell do I do, because it's in writing and you have to, to me, there's so much stress. We all have stress around Christmas, don't we? Most of us. I know I do. I just get stressed the eyeballs, and I'm just glad when I'm sitting down on Christmas Day with my Baileys in the evening, but in the run up to it, it's stressful.
It's stressful. I'm smiling, Lucy, because if you told me this was going to be a Christmas podcast, I would have like, for continuity, I would have got my Christmas jumper out just so we could make it look like this has been recorded at Christmas.
Worry. I'll edit it and put some lights around or something.
Not in November, not after Halloween and all that. But if you told me, I would have got the Santa hat on or something.
I would have
dug it out from somewhere.
But next time we do one, I'll make sure I give you the heads up at what time are you doing it.
Fair enough.
But it is hard, isn't it? And I think it's it is a very, very tense time, and it's a very difficult time, and there's so much to process, and it could be your first Christmas without your children, because they could be with the perpetrator that Christmas or whatever it is. And what I've often tried to say to victims that I've worked with is, it is a date in a diary. And I know that doesn't make it easy, and I know that doesn't make it any better. But if you can think, okay, celebrate it Christmas Eve before they go, or do that, and it just takes that focus away from that court order saying, you don't get Christmas with your kids this year. Or do you know
what's the meaning of Christmas, Lucy? Let's get deep with this. What's the meaning of Christmas? It's about spending time with family and celebrating what you've got. So it doesn't have to be Christmas Day for you to do that. And you're right. I've got clients and they go, do you know what? Can't see my child on Christmas Day, but Boxing Day or whatever, any other day, we're having a big get together and we're going to have a big do.
Doesn't have to ruin it, does it? It doesn't have to.
No, but they want to ruin it for you, because it's the empowerment. Because if they feel they've got that on you, to think, do you know what? They're sitting home all alone, and I'm here and I'm king of the castle, or queen of the castle, whatever. But it's that little control over that person that gives them the kicks. And if you take away that control, you take away their power.
Absolutely.
And because you're fueling it otherwise. If you show them any kind of upset or any emotion or any anger that they're doing this towards you, then it fuels their fire and it gives them a little bit of a kick, a little bit of excitement. Take it away, the power's gone.
Exactly.
And then they think, whatever.
That's
I don't care.
Do you know, I've said this in other podcasts when I've talked about post-separation abuse, and talking about it is trying to explain to sort of society as a whole that, a lot of people will say, well, they're no longer with the perpetrator. There you go, done and dusted. That's not how it works. And this is why these conversations are so important, because that can be the worst time, when you have actually left, when you have actually started to try and move forward and rebuild your life. That's when a perpetrator will go, hang on a minute, whoa, I've had control for so long. You think you're just going to walk away? Absolutely not. I'm going to do everything I can to make your life a living hell, because I don't want to lose that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's worse.
And that's very often, I don't know, I could be wrong. And again, I might be putting my foot in my mouth, and I do that regularly. But sometimes for me, I feel that, again, the people I've worked with, those court orders that in the instances where it is the perpetrator that's the applicant and they're going to court. It isn't that they necessarily want that time with the children. It is just about taking that control and finding, so you know what I mean? It's because things will happen and be, well, he didn't want them this weekend, or she, whatever it is, they didn't want them this weekend because they were busy. But you fought so hard for that court order to say you wanted this, and now you don't want it. You've
hit the nail on the head. 100%. Again, it's I'm going to take away something that you love just to get back at you. And it's not about the kids in the majority of some truly do love the kids. The majority of the time, it's, well, I'm going to take as much away from you as possible, just to make you lonely, to make you feel isolated even more than what I left you as a result of my abuse. But again, it's to take away that. And the courts have the presumption that both parents deserve time with the children unless there's safeguarding concerns or
Yeah.
other factors in play. Um, but like you say, you can have a court order in place and they've fought for this court order, they've spent a silly amount of money on it. Your
Mm.
client is a victim, a silly amount of money having to deal with application after application after
Yeah.
application. Um, and then they get 2, 3 months in and they go, okay, well, it's your weekend with the kids, and the perpetrator goes, I'm busy this weekend. I'm off to Wales,
Yeah.
or I'm off to the Caribbean with my new partner. And
Yeah.
it's just like, well, what do you mean? Like you're meant to be having time with the kids. And I've had clients before where they've said, well, this is what I want the arrangements to be,
Mm.
and they'll give them more time than actually the perpetrator's asking for. And I'll say, no, don't do that,
Mm.
because if the perpetrator doesn't go through with the order, the onus is on you. So you've got to make sure you're facilitating the contact. You've got to make sure the children are available.
Available.
Now,
Yeah.
say if the perpetrator doesn't turn up for 3 months and says, "No, I don't want that now. It's not happening," but then turns up a month later and says, "All right, come on, kids, come on, let's get in the car." And you go, well, no, because you've not had contact for 3 months. They'll go, well, no, it's court order in place. You've got to abide by it. And if you don't abide by it, then they enforce the application against you, enforce the order,
But yeah.
and then you put over hot coals for
Yeah.
not fulfilling that order. So you have to be really careful with the wording on a court order,
Mm.
and that's why I have say clients who I don't represent, but the litigants are personally want advice, and they'll have court orders in place just for me to have a look to approve first.
Right.
And I'll go, yeah, you don't want that word in, because what they're going to do with that is they're going to do this, and then what you're going to do with that is they're going to do this.
Mm.
So you've got to be 4 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Because I got into this, so I'm from Derby originally. I live in the West Midlands, but I haven't got the West Midlands twang. I'm a Derby boy. So when I do go back for weekends every so often, it's nice to hear a bit of the Derby twang and a up me duck.
I'm with
But
well, I'm Manchester, so you know
uh,
we
yeah,
get each other.
yeah. This I speak to people in the West Midlands and say, "You sound a bit funny, you do." I'm like, yeah, I'm not from around these
Because I'm
parts,
not.
not from around these areas. But so originally I trained at a firm called Whiteson and Williams, and I'd worked there since I was like 14 as a
Mm.
legal assistant, T-boy, office junior, and then I kept coming back each summer doing different jobs. And then I got a training contract. I went for an interview to go to the bar to be a barrister,
Yeah.
got a scholarship. My boss says, "Yeah, you're not leaving us." So made me sign my training contract then, just straight after before going to university to do the bar. And when I came back, I never wanted to do family law. It was never kind of something that kind of I thought this is what I'll do. So I did criminal law, I did private client, and then I did a bit of family. Um, but I did a few cases for it, and it was domestic abuse cases, and the solicitors on the other side were pulling little tricks. They were pulling little fast moves,
Mm.
and they weren't illegal. They were all
No.
within the law. They could do what they wanted under this, and it was. And I just thought to myself, why are we not doing this for victims? Like,
Exactly.
why solicitors acting for victims and they're just rolling over and going, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Do what you want. So I spent a few years doing that, working with different refugees organisations, thinking I can't be the only one that's doing this. I can't be the only one that's actually training refuge centres or talking to different organisations about domestic abuse. Because again, I didn't know about the community that
Mm.
there is to help victims. And I realised in the area that I was in, say the East Midlands, I was the only one doing it. And I thought that was absolutely mad. That again, family lawyers weren't kind of going, to know what, I'm going to go directly to the refugees and I'm going
Yeah.
to help them and sort
Yeah.
it out. So I learned quite quickly that I was good at it, because again, it was thinking 4 steps ahead.
Yeah.
But it's knowing what they're going to do. And unfortunately for perpetrators, they think they're very, very clever, and that they've come up with an idea. I'm going to do this. And it's the first time this idea has ever happened. It's the same stories, it's just different characters.
It's a script,
I
isn't
could,
it? It's a script. Yeah.
I could tell you like 20 cases where it's the same situation and same stories. It's just all they've done is different location,
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
names, different ages for the children and all that. It's the same story.
Isn't that's the sad thing, isn't it? And somebody else has said this to me, and she used to be a solicitor. She's got children now, so she sort of, I would say she doesn't practice, but obviously she's still registered, and she will say it's like a blueprint. You know, there's this blueprint, and the sad thing is, CAFCAS must see it, social services must see it, MARAC, you know, police, they all must see this blueprint when it goes to family court of how the perpetrator behaves. And like you say, pulls all the stops out. It's she needs he or she, but in this particular case, she needs a psychological assessment, or you know, all these things that they will do to constantly try and undermine somebody that is already in crisis, that is already, you know, potentially at the wit's end, fighting for what they feel like is their life and their children's lives, and it is such a blueprint of how a perpetrator goes about things, because it is domestic abuse. And it's so hard and it's so frustrating when you see people just sort of sitting back and taking it, you know, and not fighting for themselves. So having people like you that are fighting for those people and are fighting for, really, it's justice, isn't it? Because the sad thing is, in all of this that we're talking about, there's little lives, and their lives are going to go on, and they're going to remember all of this. They're going to know that there was, you know, they'll hear things in corners that are being spoken about, and court, the word will come up, and all these things that the court can say about shouldn't be discussed in front of the children, etc. You know, children overhear conversations about a lot of different things, and this is something that they're going to carry with them. And again, it's something I saw working with children and young people and working in group settings. The number of children that are impacted by what's going on in the family court system is absolutely, it's shameful. It really is shameful. And I'm sorry, I'm being a bit bold there, but
you're absolutely right. Do you want to hear a word that's dirty to me?
Go on.
All right. Parental alienation.
Oh yes. Yes.
Hate it. Absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times that I get it thrown at my client to say he or she is alienating these children against my client, and you go, I don't think he or she is doing that. I think it was the fact that your client smashed my client's head against a patio door numerous times.
At their head, or
threw a glass at their head, swore at them, told them that if you ever leave me, I'll kill you.
Or I'll kill myself.
Or I'll kill myself.
Yeah.
It'll all be done. I think that might have been the issue. I don't think my client is alienating in any shape or form. Yeah. Well, their emotions of the situation are clearly rubbing off on the children. No. My client's not a sponge. At the end of the day, the children have seen all of this. They can make their own opinions. They can form their own view. Don't get me wrong. I've seen some where there has been alienation. I've seen cases where I've represented victims and the perpetrators have tried to alienate the children. But again, it wasn't even very clever. We had a report come through, and it was a dad going, she's a cowbag and this and this, and she's done this and she's done that. And then the son then gives a report to the CAFCAS officer. She's a cowbag and she's done this and she's done this and she's done this. And we were like, well, clearly, clearly alienation. But then in other scenarios, just the hint of it, what the perpetrators do, they try and put the seed of it there, just to be able to justify and say, well, I'm not a perpetrator, but she's a horrible woman, or he's a horrible man. This has happened, and it's all been made up, it's all lies, and now I can't have a relationship with my child. And again, it's a get out of jail card.
It is.
It's a smoke and mirrors.
It is. And you know what? Again, you're so right. It's what's sad is that if a perpetrator is willing and is willing to gaslight and control and coercively control their partner, they're not going to stop at that. They're quite happy to do that to the children as well. It's not like the children are immune from it. More often than not, because children, I was at a webinar this morning, and she's called Anna Knight, and she talks about this audacious and how you can be one thing and another, both negative and positive at the same time, talking about victims. And I was saying, one thing that I used to say to a lot of parents is, the child can love the perpetrator. It's still their parent. And they cannot respect the behavior that parent is displaying. It's so difficult, and it's a really hard one to explain to people, because people will say, well, how can they love that perpetrator? But it's still their parent. At the end of the day, the bottom line is it's their parent. Now, some children will, or teenagers will eventually say, and young people will go, not interested, don't want to know, that behavior is unacceptable. But if you try taking that away in terms of, if you're saying that you can't love that person, then the child potentially might end up attaching more to the perpetrator because they feel like, well, but I don't want to lose them. Actually, children are bright. They will work things out for themselves. Like you said, they will see things eventually and think, actually, that's not how I want to, behave myself. And I certainly don't want to be around somebody that behaves like that. It takes time. A word that's come into my head that I hate, that I've heard crop up, weaponizing the children. I just imagine somebody like this. I'm like, what's that?
He or she is weaponizing the children against me. I hate it.
What is it? What I've never understood what that term means.
You just basically you wind up the clock on him and then just let him go and just it's mad. It's the terminology and it's the key words, and someone must have come up with it, and it's worked once.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they've carried on using it and they carried on using it. But like I say, as the laws have changed, we've got the new Domestic Abuse Act, which is great. Lovely. Again, it's kind of codifying what domestic abuse is. But we've had that in the family court system for a while now. It's just that times have had to progress, and again, there are other measures in place. But it doesn't really go far enough. It's nothing new. It's nothing brand new there that I go, oh wow, it's amazing. It's like with the if you've got a litigant in person who's a perpetrator, they can't cross-examine their victim or their alleged victim. There's a thing called the Qualified Legal Representative Scheme. So the court have to hire in a solicitor to do the cross-examination. Well, the criminal courts had that before, and the family courts are kind of coming up to that. Before, it used to be that the perpetrator would have to write some questions, and then the court would then ask the questions for cross-examination. But again, there's nothing there that's revolutionary. We're not kind of going to jump on it and it's going to solve all the problems. Because do you know about domestic violence protection orders, Lucy?
I only know of this through my previous role, DVPOs. As I learned all these terms, VPNs, all this kind of thing. But yes, I know very, very minimal about it, but I have heard of it.
So did the police, apparently, Lucy. And they give them out.
Say that, but...
And they give them out.
Along with non-molestation orders and restraining orders, but that's a whole other ballgame.
So the non-moles we get through the civil court, so we make the applications for that. The restraining orders come when, say, a perpetrator is convicted and then victim supports then ask for a restraining order. But we've got these things called DVPOs, so domestic violence protection orders, and then we have DVPNs, domestic violence protection notices. And how many years have I been doing this now then? So I think it's like 10 years, maybe, I want to say. And I've seen one domestic violence, and that it came out when I qualified. So that must have been about 2014, 15. So, but I was doing domestic abuse work before then. So they've been around for quite a while. And I've seen one. And you can imagine, I deal with all of my cases are domestic abuse cases. So if I've only seen one, and that was from a Liverpool police force they were brilliant. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly the time frames. I've just never seen a police force use them, and they're there to be used. And their argument is they're not trained on them. So we'll do the training then, get the training in place, because they were there put in place to make sure victims were protected. But if you've got it and you don't use a lawyer, because most of the time I get is go speak to a family lawyer and they can get you a non-molestation order, which is great, but they have to pay for them then, or they can get legal aid, which then takes time to do. Whereas with these orders and these notices, it's a quicker fix to try and solve a matter. But again, if you've got some powers in place and you don't use them, then they're redundant, then, aren't they?
Yeah. And in my previous role, that's one thing I used to talk about is everybody, they're not all talking to each other. Not everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet, if you like. And that's the sad thing, is if we've got these things that could be used, and these protection orders, and they're not, then it's making it so much more difficult. And just interestingly, I don't know if I think I may have mentioned this to you before, but something else that had started cropping up just before I left the charity was talking about the Section 91 barring order. Now, I don't know if many people know about that, obviously, but it's something that, again, when you've just said that about the DVPO, is it's something that could be used potentially, in my mind, as something that it could work both ways, couldn't it? But it could also be used a lot more in terms of how to make that hurdle for the perpetrator, to stop the perpetrator, is what I'm trying to say. It's repeatedly going back and using that kind of post-separation abuse, repeatedly using the court system to take them back over. For example, the children didn't answer the phone at 7 p.m. on the Thursday night. Right, she's breached the order, or he's breached the order, therefore we go back. You know, it's those kind of things that I wonder if a Section 91 would potentially, but it seems to be one of those things that doesn't get used very often. I don't know.
It doesn't. I've had about 3 of them granted, and they're hard to get because they're classed as a very draconian order. So a Section 9114, like you say, so it's an order put in place that bars a person from making an application to the court. It sounds great in theory, and it sounds like they can never make an application ever again for a set period of time. But what it really means is that they have to ask permission from the courts before they can make an application. So again, it's another filter through with it all, whether it works. Again, I've had 3, and they've not made applications in those times. But if you, again, it depends on whether they do make an application or whether courts then do accept it. For a Section 9114 to be successful, you've got to give them notice. You can't just turn up at a final hearing and go, I want a Section 9114, because the courts will say, again, it's a draconian order. It's very extreme to stop someone from making an application. But they are becoming more popular. I'm seeing them more and more. Again, it just depends on who you've got. If you've got a decent family lawyer and they feel confident in what they're doing, then they can then see from the outset that actually, yes, we've got an argument here. We can argue out that these applications being made are unnecessary. Unjust, unnecessary. And all it is, it's to cause that person some stress, some anxiety, and just to kick up the bonnet's nest. So I think you've just got to get legal advice on it, see where you go with your case. But the more people are aware of it, because again, it's one of those orders that no one talks about it. No one really knows about it until actually you see a lawyer who is confident in what they're doing, and they understand the domestic abuse cases. They understand that you've got difficult other sides that don't always make applications that are just or necessary. And it's a possible thing to use. But again, unless you use it,
how are you going to know? Exactly.
It's redundant.
It's redundant. So this is what gets me. There's all these things that are there that if they were used in the proper manner, then for the reason that they were brought into place in the first place.